The room buzzed with an electric hum. Reporters, engineers, and investors packed the sleek auditorium at SpaceX headquarters, their voices blending into a low roar of anticipation. A massive screen behind the stage displayed the SpaceX logo, its sharp edges gleaming like a beacon of progress. Cameras clicked as Elon Musk strode onto the stage, his signature grin in place. Barron leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, his lanyard twisting in his fingers. He had seen this scene play out countless times before: Musk's grand entrances, his audacious promises, the rapturous applause that followed. Barron used to feel it too, the spark of possibility, the thrill of working at the edge of human achievement. Now, it just felt like theater. Musk took the mic, his voice warm and playful. "Ladies and gentlemen, today we're unveiling something truly out of this world." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. SpaceX has revolutionized space travel. We've sent astronauts to the ISS, delivered satellites, even launched a car into orbit. But today, we're tackling an even greater challenge: hunger in zero gravity. A graphic appeared on the screen, a cartoon rocket soaring toward the ISS, trailing a banner that read, "Pizza delivered in 30 minutes, or it's free." The audience erupted. Laughter, cheers, incredulous gasps. Barron's lips twitched into a reluctant smirk despite himself. "Yes, you heard that right," Musk continued, his eyes gleaming with mischief. SpaceX is launching the world's first orbital pizza delivery service. Fresh, hot pizza delivered to the International Space Station within 30 minutes of launch. Guaranteed. Barron felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He knew better than anyone that delivering anything to the ISS was a logistical nightmare, let alone piping hot pizza. And 30 minutes? That was absurd. The entire room cheered as if they were witnessing the dawn of a new era. Musk paced the stage, his voice rising. Why stop at space travel? Why not make space livable? Why not bring the comforts of Earth to the final frontier? This is just the beginning. The applause was deafening now, and Barron's smirk vanished. A colleague nudged him. "What do you think?" Barron didn't answer. He stared at Musk, who was now fielding questions with the confidence of a showman. The knot in his stomach twisted tighter. As the crowd surged toward the stage for photos and interviews, Barron slipped out the side door. Outside, the California sun was blinding. He shoved his hands in his pockets and muttered to himself, "Pizza in space? Sure. And maybe we'll deliver tacos to Mars next." The conference room smelled like stale coffee and burnt ambition. Engineers crowded around a whiteboard covered in scribbles, equations, and hastily sketched diagrams of rockets with what appeared to be pizza boxes strapped to their sides. Barron sat at the far end of the table, arms folded, his pen tapping a slow, irritated rhythm. "All right, let's run it down," said Claire, the project manager, her tone clipped but professional. "The payload is a single pizza, sealed in a heat retention container. It has to stay warm for the 15-minute ascent, endure the vacuum of space, and arrive at the ISS ready to eat." Ideas? Someone raised a hand. "Can we use re-entry friction to reheat the pizza?" Claire shot him a look. "We're delivering to the ISS, not bringing it back to Earth." "Cryobox," another engineer offered. "Keep it frozen, then heat it up on board." "That's just microwaving," Barron muttered. "It's not delivery, it's defrosting." Musk's voice suddenly crackled through the intercom. "Guys, remember, this isn't just delivery. It's an experience. This pizza needs to be gourmet. Earth's finest. Something astronauts will dream about." Barron sighed, rubbing his temple. "How about we dream about physics instead? Every gram counts. Every second counts. And pizza? That's just a thermal nightmare waiting to happen." Claire shot him a warning glance. "We've been tasked with making it work, Barron. not questioning it. He bit back a reply, but his frustration was clear. As the meeting wore on, the ideas became more absurd: magnetic insulation, solar-powered heat pads, even a tiny oven integrated into the pod. Barron couldn't shake the feeling that this was less about science and more about spectacle. Later that night, alone in the lab, he stared at the prototype pod. It was sleek, efficient, and utterly ridiculous. A delivery box for the stars. His mind wandered to his father, who had once dreamed of working on Apollo missions. Would he be proud of this? Or would he laugh, shake his head, and say, "Barron, you're better than this gimmick"? Barron pushed the thought away and got back to work. The hangar was alive with activity, the hum of machinery mixing with bursts of laughter and shouted instructions. Engineers gathered around the test module, a replica of the ISS docking station. In the middle of it all stood the prototype pizza pod, its sleek metallic surface reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights. Barron watched as the pod was loaded with a pizza, freshly made and still steaming. The team had opted for a classic margherita, a safe, crowd-pleasing choice. The countdown began, and the prototype drone lifted off, guided by a swarm of computers. The pod moved with precision, docking smoothly with the test module. A cheer went up. Cameras zoomed in as the astronauts in training, 2 volunteers in mock flight suits, opened the pod. Their smiles faltered. It's cold." The room fell silent. Barron stepped forward, inspecting the pizza. It was intact but barely lukewarm. He turned to Claire. "The heat retention system isn't working. The vacuum of space is going to drain every bit of warmth before it even gets close to the ISS." Musk's voice rang out from the observation deck. "Great first run, team. This is exactly why we test." Barron's jaw tightened. He knew better. Musk's enthusiasm wasn't about fixing problems, it was about keeping momentum. Later, in a private meeting, Barron voiced his concerns. "Elon, this isn't going to work. The pod design doesn't account for thermal losses during the ascent. We need to go back to the drawing board." Musk waved him off with a grin. "Details, Barron. We're pioneers. We don't stop because of a little frostbite. The mission goes forward." Barron left the meeting with a sinking feeling. The weight of the project, and its inevitable failure, was pressing down on him. The countdown echoed through the control room. T-10. 9. 8. The massive Falcon 9 rocket stood tall on the launch pad, its payload, a single pizza pod, secured in the fairing. Barron sat at his station in mission control, headphones on, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Around him, engineers buzzed with nervous energy, but he felt nothing but dread. This was no longer about science or exploration. It was a spectacle, a stunt. The rocket roared to life, flames shooting out as it lifted into the sky. The control room erupted in applause, but Barron stayed silent, his eyes glued to the monitors. "Stage 1 separation confirmed," a voice announced. "Pizza pod deployment in 5. 4. 3. The pod detached smoothly, its small thrusters firing as it adjusted its trajectory toward the ISS. Barron's heart pounded as he watched the data stream in. Temperature readings from the pod were already dropping. He leaned toward Claire. "The pizza's losing heat faster than expected. It's going to arrive frozen." She frowned but didn't respond. Everyone was too focused on the big screens, where the pod's approach to the ISS was being broadcast live to millions around the world. As the pod neared its destination, Barron couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The astronauts on board the ISS floated into view, their smiles beaming as they prepared to receive the first-ever space-delivered pizza. "Docking successful," came the announcement. Another round of cheers erupted, but Barron's eyes remained fixed on the temperature gauge. It read, -10 degrees Celsius. Inside the ISS, the crew floated eagerly toward the airlock, their movements quick and smooth in microgravity. Cameras mounted in the corners of the station captured their excitement, streaming the historic moment live to Earth. Commander Lewis, the most senior astronaut, reached the docking port first. "Here it is, folks. Pizza delivery from Earth. Let's see if it lives up to the hype." She released the latch, and the pizza pod slid smoothly into the cabin. The astronauts gathered around, laughing and making jokes about which toppings might have survived the journey. The pod opened with a soft hiss, revealing the sleek container inside. Lewis unsealed the box. Her grin faltered. "Oh, no." Floating in the box was a pizza so frosty it glittered under the station's fluorescent lights. Icicles clung to the edges of the crust, and the cheese was a solid, unappetizing block. "It's frozen," another astronaut said, stifling a laugh. Lewis poked at the pizza with a gloved hand. "I think it could double as a heat shield." A third astronaut, Sam, pulled out a camera and began recording. "Hey, Elon," he said, grinning. "Thanks for the free ice pizza. Next time, maybe send an oven." Laughter filled the cabin as the astronauts took turns inspecting the interstellar snack. Despite the disappointment, their humor softened the moment. Sam uploaded the video to the ISS social media account, and within minutes, it began trending back on Earth. By the time Barron arrived at SpaceX headquarters the next morning, the memes had taken over the internet. Pictures of the frozen pizza circulated with captions like, "When you forget to defrost before launch," and "The future of space food, Frostbite edition." The media was relentless. News outlets criticized the mission as a waste of resources, while talk show hosts gleefully mocked Musk's bravado. In the conference room, the mood was tense. Musk paced the floor, his arms crossed, as Claire presented the mission's post-mortem. "The main issue was thermal insulation," Claire explained. "The heat retention system failed under vacuum conditions, and the pod's internal temperature dropped below freezing during transit." Musk waved her off. "I know what went wrong. What I want to know is how we're going to fix it. This isn't a failure, it's a first step." Barron stayed quiet, but the tension in his jaw betrayed his frustration. Claire hesitated, then spoke up. "Elon, maybe it's time to reevaluate. Focus on core missions instead of stunts like this." Musk's eyes narrowed. "This isn't a stunt. It's innovation. You can't disrupt the future by playing it safe." He turned to Barron. "You were the lead on this project. Where did you go wrong?" Barron felt the weight of the room's gaze. He could have defended himself, pointed out the rushed timelines and ignored warnings, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Musk needed a scapegoat, and Barron fit the role perfectly. "That's on me," Barron said flatly. Musk nodded curtly. "Let's do better next time." Meeting adjourned. As the room emptied, Barron stayed behind, staring at the empty whiteboard. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear or anger but from exhaustion. He had poured months into this project, and now it was little more than a punchline. Barron sat on his couch that evening, staring blankly at the TV. The news was replaying clips of the astronaut's sarcastic thank you video, but he had muted the sound hours ago. An empty takeout box sat on the coffee table, its grease-stained paper mocking him. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, expecting another notification about the mission fallout. Instead, it was a video call from his niece, Ellie. "Uncle Barron," she chirped, her face lighting up the screen. "Hey, Ellie," he said, forcing a small smile. "I saw your pizza on TV," she said excitedly. "It looked so cool. Did you really send a pizza to space?" Barron hesitated. "Yeah, but it didn't exactly go as planned." Ellie frowned. "Why not?" "Well, it got too cold on the way there. Space is a tricky place. But you're smart, she said matter-of-factly. You'll figure it out. Barron chuckled. It's not that simple, kiddo. Sometimes, no matter how hard you work, things don't turn out the way you want. Ellie tilted her head, thinking. But isn't that why you try again? That's what Mom says when I mess up my science projects. Her words struck something deep in Barron. He thought of his father again, of the dreams they had once shared of working in space. He had let the failure, and Musk's theatrics, overshadow what had once driven him, the joy of solving problems, of making the impossible possible. You're right, he said softly. Sometimes you have to try again. Ellie beamed. Next time, you should make it a pepperoni pizza. Those are the best. Barron laughed, a real laugh this time. I'll keep that in mind. After the call ended, Barron sat in silence for a moment. Then he stood, grabbed a notebook, and started sketching. If he was going to make this work, he'd do it his way. The lab was quiet except for the hum of machinery and the occasional scribble of Barron's pen. It had been weeks since the infamous frozen pizza debacle, but instead of giving up or moving on, Barron had thrown himself into solving the problem. He called it the Phoenix Pod, a nod to rising from the ashes of failure. The prototype had an advanced heat retention system, utilizing aerogel insulation and a small, battery-powered thermal coil to maintain the pizza's temperature. It was efficient, lightweight, and simple, a complete contrast to the overcomplicated design Musk had insisted on before. Barron had worked mostly alone, though a few trusted colleagues had quietly offered their help. They believed in the project, not for Musk's showmanship, but for the challenge itself. One evening, Claire found him hunched over the pod, making final adjustments. You know this isn't an official project anymore, right? She said, leaning against the doorway. Barron didn't look up. I know. She sighed, then walked over to him. You really think this will work? It has to, he said simply. Not for Musk, not for the PR. For me. I need to know I can do this. Claire studied him for a moment, then smiled. Well, let me know when you're ready to test. I'll pull a few strings. The launch was a quiet affair, devoid of the fanfare and media circus of the first attempt. Only a skeleton crew in mission control and a handful of engineers, including Barron, were there to watch. As the Falcon 9 roared to life, Barron felt his heart pounding in his chest. This time, the pizza pod had been loaded with a simple pepperoni pizza, Ellie's favorite. Stage 1 separation confirmed, came the voice over the speakers. Barron's eyes stayed glued to the monitor, watching as the Phoenix pod detached and began its final approach to the ISS. The new thermal system was holding steady, the temperature gauge showing a perfect 60 degrees Celsius. The pod docked flawlessly. On the ISS, the astronauts gathered once again, though their enthusiasm was notably more cautious this time. Commander Lewis opened the pod, and a waft of warm, cheesy aroma filled the cabin. It's hot, she said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Sam pulled out a slice and took a bite, his eyes lighting up. This is amazing. It's actually good. The crew burst into cheers, and their reaction was broadcast back to Earth. Barron allowed himself a small, relieved smile. Back at SpaceX, the success of the mission was undeniable. Musk held another press conference, taking full credit for the improvements, calling the Phoenix pod a testament to SpaceX's resilience and innovation. Barron watched the broadcast from the break room, his expression unreadable. Claire sat down next to him. You're not mad he's taking the credit? Barron shrugged. It doesn't matter. We did it. That's enough for me. Later that night, Barron walked outside, the California air cool against his skin. He looked up at the stars, imagining the ISS orbiting somewhere far above. In his mind, he pictured his father standing beside him, smiling. For the first time in a long time, Barron felt at peace. This wasn't about glory or recognition, it was about proving to himself that he could dream again. Somewhere in the sky, the astronauts were enjoying the last slices of a warm, pepperoni pizza. And that, Barron thought with a chuckle, was good enough.